intuitive approach of Shankara's Vedanta by Sri D.B. GangoLLi, AdhyAtma PrakAsha KAryalaya, HoLenaraseepura, Bangalore. In this lecture series, we have already seen 5 sessions. Now, 6th session. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Dr. Krishnamurti Shastri, Dambe, Punacha, Bantwala Taluk, Dakshina Kannada Jille, Karnataka, Bharat. Now the question is 18th question. If, as you have argued out, deliberation on the Prasthanatraya Bhashyas alone is enough for determining the essential validity and veracity of the Siddhanta of this profound science of Vedanta, why did Sri Shankaracharya write certain other Prakarana Granthas or personal treatises dealing with the specific topics enunciated in the Vedanta Shastra? Is it not proper to treat those Prakaranas too as equally valid Pramanas in the matter of determining the Tattva or the ultimate reality? Is the question. It is true that among several Vedantins there is a conventional deep-seated belief rampant to the effect that Sri Shankara has authored several Vedanta Prakaranas. It is also true that all at once we cannot affirm that there is no substantiating support for such a belief. Even so, it is certain beyond any doubt that there is no sufficient and convincing proof to categorically say that all those prakaranas which have come into existence in his name and popularly known to be his works are truly written by him. Popularly known to be his works are truly written by him. It is for at present many a time people are clamoring among themselves that 2 or 3 treatises with one and the same name are the works of Sri Shankaracharya. For example, the fact that under the one single title of Prashnottara Ratnamalika, several treatises being published in Sri Shankara's name has come to light. Not only such dubious prakaranas contain certain upadeshas or doctrines which in certain circumstances and contexts are mutually contradictory, but also are convincing evidences to conclude that they are not at all the great Acharya's works. At certain other times, quite contrary to the principal and prime spiritual teachings in his original bhashyas, there exist texts which present and affirm those very topics and tenets in a different manner altogether. Under such a confusing state of affairs, it is enough if we discard totally those controversial, though popular, Prakarana Granthas and rely entirely and exclusively on the sound support and strength of his Prasthanatraya Bhashyas. Next question. In addition to Sri Padmapada Acharya and Sri Sureshwara Acharya, who are famous as the direct disciples of the Bhashyakara Sri Shankaracharya, there are also Vyakhyanakaras, post-Shankara commentators, who have been acknowledged by the present-day scholars and academicians as great erudite Vedantic preceptors. Besides, Sri Vachaspati Mishra, who has become famous as a dedicated research scholar in several schools of philosophy like Sankhya, Yoga, Mimamsa, Nyaya, etc., is one among them. Can it be said that efforts in the form of his works and commentaries of such an eminent scholar of recent times to determine the purport of Sri Shankaracharya's Sutra Bhashya are not helpful for guidance here in this context? The fact that all Vyakhyanakaras, post-Shankara commentators or glossators, were the direct disciples of Sri Shankaracharya has not yet been established. For instance, to conclude that Sri Padmapada Acharya, who is popularly accepted and is famous as Sri Shankaracharya's direct disciple, was himself the genuine author of the controversial text called Panchapadika, which is reputed to be the glossary on Sri Shankara's Sutra Bhashyas. Neither in that treatise itself, nor in its later subcommentaries by scholars going by the name of Vivaranakaras, there is to be found any reference or mention at all. Further, a medieval scholar by name Sri Vachaspati Mishra, who had written a subcommentary Vyakhyana by name Bhamati on Sutra Bhashya, had not only written a commentary on Sri Mandana Mishra's Brahma Siddhi, a Vedanta Prakarana Grantha, but also it has been found that he has scrutinized and adopted in his glossary of Bhamati some theories of Mandana Mishra. It being so, if we rely on the support or help of a Vyakhyana Grantha of our deliberation, it will amount to inviting the risk and danger of placing ourselves up against all kinds of hurdles and hindrances in our arduous task of determining Sri Shankara's pristine pure Siddhanta. Next question, 20th. Nevertheless, these subcommentators are undoubtedly ancient scholars who had unflinching respect and reverence for Sri Shankaracharya. Can it ever be disputed that if you take into account their opinions and examine them while determining great masters' Siddhanta, it will not be helpful in any way at all? It is not quite rationally true also that it is better and more advantageous, though marginally maybe, to seek guidance from those works of Vyakhyana who are very near to Acharya's times and had the better facility of determining the Siddhanta in a scientific manner than the present day Vedantins, who are far removed in time and are trying to determine it quite independently? Not so. If only the Vyakhyanakaras had followed the original Bhashyas of Adi Shankara literally and had attempted to elucidate the secret and subtle meanings and purports of those texts, or in the alternative, if they had attempted to seek and show as to which of the Bhashya excerpts had been adduced to substantiate and support their own independent conclusions, as and when such tenets had been presented before the general followers or readers, then in that event, as suggested by you, their subcommentaries would have been invariably helpful in deciding the correct Siddhanta in full agreement with the original Bhashyas. But unfortunately, that is not the real state of affairs at all. In support of this conclusion, a few glaring examples are mentioned below. First one, these post-Shankara glossators have, instead of accepting and interpreting the simple and straightforward meaning of the Bhashya portions, even where they are very evident and indubitable, distorted the original Bhashya sentences and have attempted to show that they have different and that is their own misconceived meanings for them. Second one, they have surreptitiously introduced and interpolated such theories which have not even been suggested or mentioned anywhere in the Bhashyas, and thereby they have strengthened the erroneous belief that quite different from traditional and time-tested Bhashya Prasthana is the present day highly speculative Vyakhyana Prasthana. Third one, these post-Shankara Vyakyanakaras have projected their own doctrinaire or dogmatic theories quite contrary to the Siddhanta which Sri Shankara had vociferously and vigorously propounded, and have unwittingly brought about contradiction or abrogation of the very methodology which they have themselves acknowledged earlier. Fourth one, not only have these post-Shankara subcommentators have argued out amongst themselves, mutually opposing one another's prasthanas, but also, if one wishes to determine what exactly is their opinion, he has perforce to take recourse to other upavyakyanas or subcommentaries. More often than not, those subcommentaries too are, in certain circumstances or contexts, quite opposed to their own respective sources or original authoritative treatises. The last or fifth point, So much so, for the present chaotic trend of the alien Bhashyakaras, opposed to Sri Shankara, and who are rabid chronic critics of his, ever ready to pick holes in the latter's methodology and teachings, to have been invariably deluded to think that merely by refuting any one of these defective Vyakhyanakaras written by these post Shankara commentators, they have succeeded in condemning or refuting Sri Shankara's Prasthana and Siddhanta themselves. These numerous mutually contradictory Vyakhyanas have become solely responsible. So, next 21st question. All right. As per your above list of allegations and conclusions, can you give at least one apt illustration for each one of the 5 allegations for our edification? Now, answer 1. Example for distorting the meaning of the Bhashya excerpt, even in a context where its meaning or purport is indubitably evident and clear, and further trying to show that there exists quite a different meaning for it. अन्योन्यस्मिन् अन्योन्यात्मकताम् अन्योन्या धर्मांश्च अध्यस्य इतरेतर विवेकेन अत्यंत विविक्त योः धर्माधर्मिणोः मिथ्याज्ञाननिमित्तः सत्यानृते मिथुनीकृत्य अहमिदं ममेदम् इति नैसर्गिकोऽयं लोकव्यवहारः is the original Bhashya excerpt. अन्योन्यस्मिन् अन्योन्यात्मकाम् अन्योन्यधर्माधर्मांश्च अध्यस्य इतरेतर विवेकेन अत्यंत विविक्त योः धर्माधर्मिणोः मिथ्याज्ञाननिमित्तः सत्यानृते मिथुनीकृत्य अहमिदं ममेदम् इति नैसर्गिकोऽयं लोकव्यवहारः is the original Bhashya excerpt. Here in this context, it is crystal clear and unambiguously evident that the literal meaning of this Bhashya statement is, although Atman and Anatman, self and not self respectively, and the respective dharmas or characteristic qualities are extremely different and distinct because of the reason that the one is not distinguished from the other by means of determination, itara vivekena, as a result of mithya or misconception. People in general have been transacting in their workaday world in the forms of I am this is mine, and such transactions are quite natural and innate, naisargika. Even so, it is distorted in the manner. The word naisargika means pratyak chaitanya sattamatranu meaning that phenomenon which is conjoined to the pure being or existence of the internal pure consciousness. Further, loka vyavahara, which literally speaking means routine, mundane transactions carried out by the common run of people, is distorted to mean lokaha iti vyavaharaha manusyoham ityabhimanaha, meaning the feeling or thought entertained by the people to the effect I am a human being. Mithya jnana nimittaha, meaning mithya tad ajnanam cha mithya jnanam tannimittaha tadupadanaha, meaning ajnana or non-comprehension which is false, mithya, and indefinable, anirvachaniya, which is itself the nimitta, that is material cause, upadana karana, panchapadika. Says like this. Thus, one Vyakhyanakara has distorted the original Bhashya sentence and drawn his own conclusions, and his is very clearly a naive attempt to squeeze into the Bhashya the alien concept or theory of avidya upadana. Avidya itself treated as a potential force which is the material cause for the world of duality, suitable to his own queer but erroneous Siddhanta. Next, second example for evolving and projecting theories or concepts nowhere to be found in the original Bhashyas. The Bhashyakara Siddhanta is by means of Samyak Jnana or intuitive experience of the self, once Mithya Jnana or misconception is totally removed and the Jnani, self-realized one, gets convinced that never in the tenses of time his essential nature of being was of the forms of Kartru or an agent of action or Bhoktru or an enjoyer. Quite contrary to this Bhashya interpretation, some post-Shankara commentators have written in their treatises like Ishtasiddhi and Vivarana, etc., that till the fall of the physical body, an avidya, lesha, a remnant of nescience or non-comprehension, meaning a samskara or a latent impression and its remnant invariably exists. Some others have even gone to the extent of imagining that in the context where it is said that the seashell, nacre of and rope, etc., are misconceived to be silver and snake, respectively, etc., an indefinable silver, anirvachaniya rajata, and an indefinable snake, anirvachaniya sarpa, etc., are born actually as effects of the causal avidya, and then have foolishly proceeded to educe peculiar but puerile yuktis to uphold their own whimsical, untenable opinions, pratibhasika satta, etc., actually not said in Shankara's Bhashyas. Next, third one. Example for projecting their own concept